It was a December night, and Manhattan shimmered beneath 1,000 lights. High above, the Meridian Global Systems Tower rose like a massive crystal, reflecting the silver-gray sky and drifting mist between skyscrapers. Outside the glass walls, fine snowflakes floated and melted into drops the moment they touched the warmth radiating from the executive control room on the 78th floor. Amid the ocean of blue light cast by dozens of monitors, Nathan Carter stood alone. 38 years old, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that fit his tall, lean frame, broad-shouldered, collar open, tie loosened, as if he had just pulled the breath out of himself. His face was sharply cut. His pale gray eyes, usually cold as steel, were now dark, filled with collapsing numbers. They once called him the steel brain of Manhattan, a cold genius who turned numbers into power, a man who believed he could control everything except emotion. But tonight the numbers had betrayed him. A short beep, then another. Across the main screen, red letters began to flash. Alert. System breach detected. The error column blazed to life. Then all screens began to flicker, a storm of light. "No way," Nathan muttered, his hand trembling. He lunged toward the console, typing furiously, eyes darting across the lines of free-falling data. "Lock the secondary server. Transfer everything to the backup." No response. The next line hit him like ice. "Access denied." In a heartbeat, Meridian's entire system, the empire he had built over 15 years, collapsed. Data vanished. Bank accounts emptied. Multi-billion-dollar deals dissolved like steam. On the table lay the $12 billion European merger contract, pages fluttering under the cold breath of the air conditioner. Now nothing more than meaningless paper. His heartbeat echoed in his skull. Pain shot through his temples. The veins there pulsed violently. He slammed his fist onto the desk. The sharp crack of breaking skin echoed. A thin smear of blood spread across the walnut surface. He bent forward, shoulders trembling, not from fear, but from the hollow ache of realizing he had just lost everything. Outside the glass walls, the city still glowed. New York never stopped for anyone. It kept moving, loud, proud, dazzling, and utterly indifferent, just like he had once been. Nathan lifted his gaze to the reflection in the window. A man undone, tie crooked, eyes vacant amid the neon wilderness. The empire he had built with blood and ambition had exploded in his hands. He drew in a deep breath. The boardroom was silent. Every employee had left hours ago. Only the wind whistled through the narrow vent, and somewhere nearby, a soft, steady sound. Rubber wheels rolling across marble. An unfamiliar sound, disturbingly ordinary in a place once filled with keyboard clicks and ringing phones. He closed his eyes. Probably the night janitor. A part of him wanted to bark, "Leave, I need silence." But then footsteps stopped just outside the glass door. "Excuse me, are you still here?" The voice was soft, slightly husky, carrying an accent. Not quite New York. He turned. Dim fluorescent light spilled from the hallway, reflecting off the glass wall. In that pale glow stood a young woman, her hands on a mop cart, her brown hair tied back loosely, with a few strands falling across her cheek. Her navy blue uniform made her skin look even fairer. Her eyes, clear gray like rain-washed glass, met his. The name tag on her chest was faded with time. El Rivera. Nathan gave a strained, bitter smile. "Don't worry, you're not bothering me. I'm just watching 15 years of my life burn down." Lucy Rivera tilted her head slightly. Her gaze held no pity, no fear, only a calm, inexplicable gentleness. "Burn down," she said quietly. "It looks to me like a cyber attack." He froze. "What did you just say?" She stepped closer, her eyes flicking over the blackened screens, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the desk. "I used to work in cybersecurity. Before, my life took a turn." She paused, then asked softly, "May I take a look?" Nathan blinked. Part of him wanted to laugh. Absurd. A janitor offering to fix a billion-dollar corporation. And yet something in her eyes kept him from saying no. There was quiet confidence there. Unspoken. Unforced. He pushed the chair toward her and gestured. "Go ahead." Lucy sat down. Her hands were small, fingers long, moving over the keyboard so swiftly that the reflected light blurred into streaks. Each keystroke seemed to sync with the pounding of his heart. Windows opened, command lines streamed across the screen. She moved with precision, her eyes locked as the rest of the world faded away. Nathan watched, astonished. No hesitation, no searching. Every motion was instinct, refined, exact. He felt as though he were looking at himself, only stripped of power and a suit, yet driven by the same unshakable belief that nothing was impossible. Gradually, the screen shifted from red to blue. Hidden folders reappeared, data restored, alerts faded. Lucy leaned back, exhaling softly, a faint smile curving her lips. See? It's not dead. It just needed someone who knew how to save it. Nathan stared at the screens, blue light flickering in eyes that had long forgotten how to believe. He murmured, barely audible, "It's alive again." And there in the highest room in Manhattan, amid cold glass and infinite reflections, Nathan Carter, the man who once thought himself invincible, stood silently watching the janitor who had just resurrected his world. And in that quiet, electric glow, for the first time in years, he felt hope. 5 a.m. Manhattan still lay under a thin veil of mist, the night reluctant to let go. From the 78th floor of the Meridian Global Tower, white-blue light poured out like a flood, illuminating the low clouds beyond the glass walls. The screens that had once been filled with red error codes now blazed bright again. Streams of data restored, systems stabilizing, the steady hum of cooling fans sounding like the breathing of a body newly revived. Nathan Carter sat on the edge of the desk, his back resting lightly against the chair. His shirt was wrinkled, streaked with a faint line of dried blood near his knuckles. The tie had disappeared sometime in the night. The soft glow from the servers split his face in half. One side lit, the other shadowed, revealing a man who had just crossed the longest night of his life. His cheekbones were hollow, his lips dry, his eyes rimmed with fatigue. Yet deep within them, something fragile and new glimmered, the faint spark of belief returning. Across from him, Lucy Rivera sat quietly in the swivel chair, her hands resting on her lap, her breathing slow and heavy. Her navy blue uniform had darkened with sweat and dust. A few damp strands of hair clung to her neck. She had just undone her hair, letting the brown waves fall loosely across her shoulders, the fluorescent light tracing a silver sheen along the strands. On the desk between them, 2 paper coffee cups sat untouched and cold. One his, one hers. The steam had long vanished, but the bitter scent still lingered in the air between them. In the room now filled with the hum of reawakened machines, Lucy watched the final monitor flicker to life. A faint, tired smile curved her lips. "Don't thank me," she murmured, her voice low and rough from exhaustion and an all-nighter. "Fix what's broken out there, too." Nathan turned to her. "What's broken out there?" She pointed toward the glass wall, where the eastern sky was slowly shifting from gray to rose. "The whole city. The man behind all this machinery. Not everything can be restored with a few lines of code." He fell silent. Her words were soft, yet they struck deeper than any blow he'd ever taken. Nathan Carter, the man who commanded thousands, who believed people were the smallest variable in the equation of success, now sat across from a woman with no title, realizing he had never truly controlled anything at all. He looked down, fingers interlacing, eyes fixed on the space between the 2 cold cups. "You know," he said with a faint, self-mocking laugh, "I can't remember the last time I talked to someone for more than 5 minutes without thinking about a contract." Lucy answered without looking away from the glowing screens. "Maybe that's because you talk to data more than to people." Silence. Outside, the wind whispered faintly against the glass. Down below, the city's traffic lights began to shift from red to green, announcing the arrival of morning. Nathan glanced sideways at Lucy's profile. Pale, tired, yet her gray eyes still shone, steady and deep. There was something about her that steadied him, as if in his world of logic and power, she was the one line that needed no proof. He reached for the table and slid his untouched cup toward her. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice hoarse, disarmingly sincere. "Not just for the system, Lucy accepted it, her hand trembling slightly. She smiled, a weary, warm smile. I didn't save you. I just don't like seeing people give up in front of a black screen. Nathan met her gaze and saw himself reflected there. Not the powerful CEO, but a man relearning how to begin. Beyond the glass, dawn spilled slowly across the skyline, brushing gold over their shoulders. The top floor of Meridian seemed to float above the world, suspended in the first light of day. He spoke quietly, almost afraid to break the fragile stillness. You have no idea what you just did. Lucy looked up. I did what I knew. He shook his head, his eyes glistening with something he couldn't quite name. No, you brought it back. All of it. She tilted her head, puzzled. You mean the system? Nathan's gaze drifted to the window, where the sun was cresting the horizon. Pale gold, gentle, threading light through snow-dusted towers of glass. He exhaled, a faint smile ghosting through the mist of his breath. No, I mean me. Lucy went quiet. Outside, Manhattan awoke. Streetlights dimmed, sparrows took flight, and dew evaporated from the rooftops. The room filled with a new kind of light, not from the servers, but from a hope newly lit within two exhausted souls. She rose, unpinned the old worn name badge from her chest. He remained seated, watching as she walked past the glowing monitors, her steps soft but sure. Each footfall echoed like the heartbeat of the building reborn. The door closed gently behind her. Nathan stayed where he was. On the main screen, a simple message appeared, beautiful in its clarity. System restored successfully. The blue light reflected in his eyes. Nathan smiled faintly, whispering, not to her, but to himself. You brought me back to life. And for the first time in years, the man who had forgotten what hope felt like finally understood what a real dawn was. Morning in Manhattan was dazzlingly cruel. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the night's mist, reflecting off the massive glass facade of Meridian Global Systems. Below, the city pulsed like a giant artery revived after a heart attack. Cars flooding the streets, financial bulletins blaring breaking news, and Nathan Carter's name flashing across every screen. Meridian Global restores all data overnight, a technological miracle in the heart of New York. Hacker defeated by the cold CEO and a mysterious woman. The headlines scrolled nonstop across cafe televisions where people sipped their lattes and checked the stock market tickers. Up on the 78th floor, the battlefield of last night, now stood the birthplace of a new legend. Nathan Carter walked into the main conference room. He wore a dark suit, crisp white collar, face clean-shaven, immaculate to the point of severity. But there was something different in his eyes now. Not just ambition, a quiet glimmer of something deeper. Gratitude, perhaps. Behind him, Lucy Rivera followed at a measured pace. Same blue janitor uniform, same neatly tied brown hair. Yet she seemed like a different person under the silver-lit hallway. No longer the invisible figure pushing a mop in the dark. Every gaze turned toward her. Curious, skeptical, even disdainful. The conference room opened, glass walls overlooking Fifth Avenue. Over 20 people sat waiting, dressed in expensive suits, wearing gleaming watches and looking uneasy. No one spoke when Nathan entered. He set his briefcase down, scanned the room, and said in a calm, steady voice, Meridian survived. The system is restored. The data is safe, and we're still here. A few heads nodded, others didn't. The air was thick with anxiety. Nathan paused, fingers tapping lightly against the glass table. I'm not here to recap last night, he continued. I'm here to say that. He turned toward the door. We owe it to someone. Lucy stepped in. The room fell into absolute silence. The clicking of pens stopped. Heels froze midair. The woman in a janitor's uniform stood at the head of the table, surrounded by a forest of suits and ties. There was no pride on her face, only quiet composure. Her eyes met Nathan's with a small nod, like two people sharing a secret the world would never understand. Nathan spoke again. This is Lucy Rivera, the person who saved our entire system. She's not a hacker, not an IT specialist. She's the janitor of this floor, and she's the reason we're all standing here this morning. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. CTO Ryan Campbell, mid-40s, hair slicked back, tailored black suit, crossed his arms, his tone sharp with arrogance. "You're saying the cleaning lady saved Meridian?" "Nathan, this isn't the time for fairy tales." Nathan turned, gaze hard enough to freeze the air. "Not a fairy tale, Ryan. I was there. She did what your entire team couldn't." Ryan arched a brow, smirking. "With all due respect, a system as complex as ours doesn't just get fixed by a woman holding a mop." Lucy's lips moved slightly, her voice quiet but crystal clear. "Not a mop. Knowledge. I just happened to carry both." A few people chuckled, easing the tension. Nathan glanced at her, a mix of pride and astonishment flickering in his eyes. He leaned forward, palms on the table. "You asked why I trusted her, Ryan? Because when everything collapsed, she was the only one who didn't walk away. And I learned something last night. Titles don't define a person's worth." The words hit like a dropped stone, heavy, echoing. 1 second. 2. The room was utterly still. Then Nathan opened his briefcase, pulled out a new employee badge, and placed it in front of Lucy. "Starting today, she's the head of cybersecurity for Meridian Global Systems. Reporting directly to me." No one spoke. Ryan looked away, jaw tight. A few others stared at Lucy as if at a paradox. Admiration tangled with disbelief. But the morning light pouring through the glass caught her uniform, making the plain blue fabric shimmer like a metal. Lucy inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Her fingers brushed the badge. She wasn't dreaming, but the moment still felt unreal. In a world that once made her invisible, the light was finally finding her. Nathan gave a small nod, his tone deep but warm. "Welcome home, Lucy." She answered, her smile faint but sincere. "I never left, sir." The room stayed quiet, only the hum of the AC and the scratch of pens signing papers. Outside, the CNBC broadcast echoed faintly through the glass. Meridian Global shares surged 12% at market open. Investors call it a miracle recovery. The executives bent over their tablets, whispering figures and projections. But Nathan didn't listen. He looked toward the woman standing by the window, morning light framing her brown hair with a soft halo. She still wore the same uniform, clutching her new badge. No flowers, no applause. Only sunlight and silence. The janitor who once cleaned the halls now protected an empire. In her gray eyes there was no pride, only the calm strength of someone who had fallen before and learned to rise by her own hand. When the meeting ended and the others drifted away, Nathan lingered by the door. "Thank you for staying last night," he said quietly. Lucy turned, her eyes reflecting the sunrise beyond the glass. "You stayed too," she replied. He let out a soft laugh. Behind them, the massive window reflected the sun climbing above Manhattan's skyline. A new day beginning. And on the 78th floor of that skyscraper, the invisible one from last night had become the hero in the light. A week after the Meridian miracle, the glass tower once again blazed through the night. But this time, it wasn't panic. It was rebirth. Under Lucy Rivera's hands, the entire cybersecurity system was rebuilt from the ground up. The outdated servers were replaced, firewalls were double encrypted, and pathways were restructured into anti-intrusion layers. She worked without pause, often the first to arrive and the last to leave. The technical operations floor, an area few ever visited, had now become her domain. Gone was the smell of disinfectant and the sterile fluorescent glare. In its place was the rhythm of keystrokes mingling with the low hum of cooling fans, like the heartbeat of some vast machine being brought back to life. Lucy sat at the center of it all, the blue glow of the monitors washing over her delicate face. Sleeves rolled up, brown hair tied loosely, a few strands clinging to her neck. Her gray eyes stayed fixed on the cascading lines of code as her fingers danced over the keys. Then she froze. A flash of strange characters appeared on the screen. Short, but chillingly familiar. Signature XN47A. Her heart tightened. She knew that code. She'd seen it during last week's attack, the very string that had triggered the total system collapse. No, impossible. She traced it back, opened additional logs, and cross-checked timestamps. Everything was in order, except one thing. The signal didn't come from outside. Origin, internal access point, floor 78, Nathan's floor. Lucy stood abruptly, pacing the room, fingertips tapping the edge of the metal table. She forced herself to breathe. Don't jump to conclusions. But it was clear. Someone on the inside was manipulating the system. A ghost in the code. Someone who knew how to hide, how to mislead. The ceiling lights flickered faintly, as if the room itself was breathing in sync with her pulse. Lucy opened another monitoring window and input a parallel tracing command. The screen read, "Trace initiated. Estimated time 4 hours." She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment, exhausted. But stopping wasn't an option. The metal door slid open softly. The scent of fresh coffee drifted through the cold air. Nathan Carter stepped in, silent, holding 2 paper cups. The light from the servers poured over his shoulders, casting a long shadow across the floor. His jacket was gone, sleeves rolled high. The skin around his wrist marked red, where the watch had been too tight. He still carried the quiet confidence of a man used to command, but in his eyes was something new, a tired gentleness. He set a cup in front of her. "I'm guessing you haven't had dinner." Lucy opened her eyes, lifting her head slightly. "Thanks. Black coffee? No sugar?" "I can learn fast when I need to," Nathan said, half joking, half true. Silence fell between them, filled only by the low, steady hum of the servers, the hidden breath of the building. Lucy turned her screen toward him, her voice calm but tight. "I found something strange." The same signature from the last attack. Nathan frowned, leaning closer. The code lines reflected in his glasses. "You're sure?" "Absolutely. But this time the signal's internal." He looked at her. "You mean someone inside Meridian?" "Not mean. No," she said coldly, each word cutting sharply. "And whoever it is, they're good. They know how to mask their trail and move between layers unseen. Whoever they are, they're playing a cat-and-mouse game." Nathan sank into the chair beside her, shoulders nearly brushing. He looked at the screen, but listened to her voice instead, steady, logical, unflinching. "If they're inside," he said slowly, "then we'll drag them into the light." "It won't be easy," Lucy shook her head. "They know every protocol, every virtual door I built. That means they're not just an infiltrator. They were part of this system." Nathan leaned back, frowning deeply. A heavy silence spread between them. Lucy's fingers began to move again, fast and precise. Streams of data scrolled upward like rain. Nathan watched her hands, small, deft, unyielding. Every keystroke pulsed with life, a rhythm both technical and human. He realized that in this world of cold code, she might be the only one left with a heartbeat. She looked up and caught his gaze. "Do you believe in intuition?" "I used to trust numbers more than people," he said quietly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "But lately, I've been learning otherwise. From you." She said nothing, just lifted the cup, took a sip, the bitterness curling across her tongue. For a brief moment, the two sat in silence, surrounded by the hum of the machines and bathed in the blue pulse of the living system they guarded. The wall clock read 11:47 p.m. Lucy rose to check the auxiliary storage unit. She didn't see it, the tiny camera in the corner of the ceiling that turned slightly, tracking her every step. Her image appeared on another monitor somewhere far away, in a dark room lit only by the ember of a burning cigarette. A figure in the shadows smiled faintly, tapping a slow rhythm on the keyboard. Across the screen appeared the words, "Let's see how far you can go, Miss Rivera." Back on the technical floor, Nathan lifted his gaze, catching their reflections in the glass, a CEO and an unknown engineer sitting side by side. Neither spoke, but both felt it. The game had just begun. That night, the technical floor of Meridian Global was bathed in cold metallic light. The rows of servers hummed steadily, signal lights blinking like thousands of synchronized electronic heartbeats. The whole building seemed calm, yet on Lucy Rivera's monitor, a storm of data was rising. She had detected a strange access chain. hidden log entries disguised under an internal encryption protocol that only someone inside the company would know. Her gray eyes locked onto the screen, pupils tightening as a line appeared. Access ID R. Campbell at Meridian.gs. Ryan Campbell, Chief Technology Officer, the same man who had opposed Nathan's decision to promote her, the same man who once sat at the head of the conference table with a sneer and said, "A janitor can't save a system." And now it was his name that had unlocked the data core illegally the previous night. Lucy straightened, fingers frozen over the keyboard. A chill ran down her spine, not from fear but from realization. That sinking moment when every loose piece suddenly fits together into something terrifying. She extracted the entire log, copied it to her personal drive, and left the room quickly. The corridor lights reflected across the polished floor, stretching her shadow long and solitary. Nathan's office on the 78th floor was still lit, though the clock had passed 10 p.m. He sat by the glass wall, suit jacket draped over the chair, tie loosened. When Lucy entered, he looked up, his eyes hollow with fatigue, but still carrying that aura of control. "What is it?" he asked. Lucy said nothing. She plugged the hard drive into his laptop, letting the streams of data scroll across the screen. The ID R. Campbell flickered line by line, each one a needle to trust. "He logged into the auxiliary system at 2 a.m., Lucy said quietly, copied financial files and altered access permissions. This was the trigger point of the first breach. Nathan stood. The chair rolled back with a soft click. The veins on his hands stood out beneath the skin. His eyes locked onto the screen, his breath heavy. "Ryan," he muttered, disbelief threading through his voice. Lucy met his gaze, calm but tinged with sorrow. "I've verified it 3 times. There's no mistake." Nathan paced the room, fists clenching, then releasing. He wanted to break something, a screen, a wall, or maybe the very trust he'd built. But instead of rage, he stopped, leaning on the desk, head bowed. "Don't expose it yet," he said hoarsely. "If I accuse him without absolute proof, the board will explode." Lucy understood instantly. "You want to set a trap?" "Exactly. Let him walk into it himself. Tomorrow night, you'll stay late as usual. I'll monitor from the control room. If he interferes again, we'll catch him in the act." She nodded, eyes glinting with resolve. "Then I'll be the bait." The next night, the tech floor glowed again. Lucy sat before the monitor, the blue light washing over her tired but focused face. Everything inside her was unnervingly still. No fear, no anxiety, only a steel-cold alertness. On the desk sat an old coffee cup, her phone face down, and a decoy file filled with dummy data. Across the building in the security control room, Nathan watched through the surveillance feed. His breathing grew heavier. Every keystroke she made echoed through the system, and he realized his hands were clenched into white fists. 11:37 p.m. The tech floor door eased open. Footsteps tapped lightly on metal flooring. Lucy didn't turn. She kept typing, eyes fixed on the blank screen. "Working this late, Lucy?" Ryan's voice slid through the air, smooth as if they'd just crossed paths by chance. "Finishing a security patch," she replied evenly. "You working too?" Ryan stepped closer, placing a hand on her desk, eyes scanning the code. "You've been digging too deep," he said, tone sharp, smile thin as a blade. "I'm just doing my job." "Are you?" He leaned closer, voice lowering. "Or do you think you're some kind of hero? You think Nathan will trust you forever?" Lucy slowly turned, the light catching her eyes. "What are you afraid of, Ryan? Being caught or being replaced?" The air tightened. The server's hum became a pulsing beat. Ryan lunged forward, reaching for the mouse, but a voice cut through the room, low and cold as steel. "Enough!" "It's over, Ryan." Nathan stepped out from the shadows behind the glass wall, light flashing across his rigid face. Lucy rose, stepping aside. Ryan flinched, eyes darting, then let out a dry laugh. "Over? No, Nathan, you have no idea. Do you think you've just saved the company? You've only scraped the surface." Nathan advanced a step, voice taut. "You destroyed what we built for 10 years. For what?" Ryan's smile vanished. Because Meridian sold its soul to the same people you call partners. I just tore off the mask. He turned, pushing through the door. Two security guards blocked the exit, but Ryan was fast, slipping through a side panel like a shadow, his footsteps fading down the hall. Lucy made a move to follow, but Nathan lifted a hand. Don't. He'll come back, or someone else will. There's more behind this. They looked at each other. Amid the blue glow of hundreds of monitors, both knew the battle wasn't over. Up in the corner, a security camera blinked once, then went dark. Someone had just cut the feed. Outside, through the vast glass panels, the Manhattan sky dissolved into rain. And in the reflection of the blue lights across Lucy's eyes, trust, newly rebuilt, had just been unplugged again. Late afternoon, thin threads of silver rain traced the enormous glass face of Meridian Global Systems, merging with Manhattan's pewter gray sky. In the internal audit room on the 51st floor, white LED light reflected off Lucy Rivera's face, making her gray eyes colder, brighter. On the monitor, hundreds of lines of financial data scrolled, numbers, transaction codes, hidden paths. They streamed like a maze with no exit. Lucy leaned in. Blue light washed her cheekbones, and her lips pressed together. Her hands moved slowly, deliberately, each click like probing for a hidden vein beneath the skin of the system. She was hunting for something that did not belong to Meridian, a crack in the perfect flow of money. 3 hours passed. The room was silent, save for the hum of fans and the patter of rain on the glass. Then suddenly, a strange string of characters appeared on screen. NLS-001. Lucy frowned. The first 3 letters stopped her breath. Neuroline Systems. She opened the file and cross-checked the records. Payments were hidden under the heading Financial Consulting. Each transfer was a few tens of thousands of dollars, scattered and regular, totaling more than $5.7 million over 2 years. Approver, Valerie Stone, Chief Financial Officer. Lucy slid back from the desk. She sat upright and stared at the name glowing on the dark screen. Valerie Stone, the woman with the graceful stride, a discreet smile, and confident eyes, always at Nathan's side in every major meeting, a name the company treated as a financial pillar. Nathan called a friend and ally. Nathan's office, 78th floor. The lights were still on, though the clock neared midnight. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks like tears down the glass. Nathan sat at his desk, jacket off, rubbing his forehead. All day he'd wrestled with the emergency meeting about Ryan's disappearance, with pressure from the board and with the gnawing doubt that wouldn't leave him. When Lucy entered, he looked up, his eyes a mixture of fatigue and hope. "Any news?" he asked. Lucy set the hard drive on the desk and plugged it into the machine. Data populated the screen. A string of financial statements appeared, numbers trailing into an endless chain of transactions. Her voice was even, but each word landed like a hammer. Transfers to Neuroline Systems. They started 5 years ago. Drip by drip, hard to detect. Approver, Valerie Stone. Nathan went still. A soft snap sounded as he gripped a pen until it broke. No, Valerie couldn't have done this. Lucy said nothing. She let him examine the screen, let him look at the irrefutable evidence. Transaction histories, encrypted emails, payment confirmations. Each figure felt like a cut, tearing at the fragile trust already wounded by the Ryan incident. "She's my friend, Lucy," Nathan said, hoarse as if pleading for himself. "Exactly why she chose him," Lucy replied, eyes never leaving the data. The line stopped him cold. He turned away and walked to the window, staring out into the rain. The city still glowed, but in his eyes every light had dimmed. Reflections lit the glass and revealed pain at the corner of his eyes, a vulnerability he rarely allowed. A man who once trusted systems, intellect, and numbers now had to accept that the person he trusted most might have betrayed him. "She knows everything about the company," Nathan murmured. "She manages funds, audits, investment projects. If she's colluding with Neuroline, we're living in a house with hollow foundations." Lucy stood beside him, silent. In the dim light, her face appeared cool yet compassionate. She understood that kind of hurt, the pain of being stabbed in the back, not with a blade but with betrayal. I'll call the lawyers, Nathan said, voice hardening. Don't, Lucy cut in. If you do that, they'll destroy the evidence. Valerie isn't a pawn. She's the one who opened the door for the entire network. We need to trap her. He turned to meet her eyes. A trap? Yes. Make her think we don't know. I'll set up a dummy server with fake financials. Pretend it's a security update. If she or her partners access it, we'll capture everything. Nathan was silent for a few beats. The city light painted half his face bright, half in shadow. Dangerous. I know, Lucy said, her voice quiet but firm. But if we don't, everything you've protected will collapse again. Silence settled. The rain beat a steady drum against the glass, pressing into their chests. Nathan looked at her, worry and admiration battling behind his gaze. He realized Lucy was more than an engineer or the woman who'd saved the company. She was its soul, the only one willing to stare straight into the wound and touch the dark. If you're right, he said slowly, we're not just up against Valerie, we're against whatever stands behind Neuroline. I'm never afraid of whoever is behind it, she replied, voice low as rain. I'm only afraid of people beside me who would stab without warning. Nathan bowed his head and exhaled. A tired smile flickered, real and small. Then Lucy Rivera, we're doing this together again. She nodded, fingers brushing the hard drive almost unconsciously. The monitor's glow washed them in a pale blue, an eerie, fragile light like the faith they'd just rekindled in the storm. Outside, the rain fell on. Floor 78 thrummed with server noise and human heartbeat. Within Meridian, a web of lies was slowly revealing itself, and at its center, Valerie Stone, the woman once crowned Queen of Finance, now stood as merely a piece in the power game Lucy was about to upend. She spoke, quiet but resolute. Tomorrow night we begin. Nathan looked out through the glass, where the city was a vast circuit board, each light a datum, each person a line of code. And somewhere in that maze, a betrayal had just woken. A soft rain fell over Manhattan that night, each drop sharp and cold as it struck the glass roof of Meridian Global Systems, scattering into thousands of tiny sparks like metallic dust. On the tech floor, a pale blue light washed over Lucy Rivera's face. Focused, meticulous, unblinking. Beneath her fingers, a decoy server was coming to life, a virtual replica perfectly mirroring Meridian's financial system. Every pathway, every access key, every folder rebuilt line by line. But instead of real data, what lay inside was a trap. Fake files laced with hidden trackers, designed to record every keystroke and reveal the identity of whoever tried to break in. If Valerie really is the one who opened the gate, Lucy murmured, she won't be able to resist. Nathan Carter stood by the doorway, dark suit, loosened tie. The light from the monitors reflected off his face, eyes shadowed, heavy with anger and grief. He watched Lucy's every movement, sensing the restrained storm behind her composure. We only get one shot, he said. Once she logs in, we'll see everything. Lucy nodded, adjusted the final string of code, and pressed enter. The data gate sealed. The bait was set. Now they waited. 3 a.m. and on the monitor, red text flashed. Unauthorized access detected. IP, external node. Lower Manhattan. Lucy looked up, pulse quickening, though her voice stayed calm. She took the bait. Nathan moved closer. Lines of code streamed down like rainfall. Access points, passwords, file commands. The system tracked every click and every data packet copied. Then the identity appeared. Bright white letters on a black screen. User v.stone@meridian.gs. No doubt anymore. Valerie Stone, co-founder, trusted friend, the woman Nathan once believed shared his vision to the core. He stood still, hands clenched until his knuckles blanched. His anger didn't explode. It burned quietly, deep like coals beneath his breath. Lucy glanced at him, the blue light cutting across her pale face, her eyes sharp as blades. Coordinates confirmed. Lower Manhattan, 32nd floor, North Park Building. Nathan nodded once. Let's go! The streets shimmered with rain. Their car sliced through puddles, city lights warping across the windshield. Lucy sat in the passenger seat, her laptop tightly gripped. She tried to keep her breathing steady, though adrenaline surged through her like electricity. Everything since they'd set the trap had unfolded perfectly. Too perfectly. And she knew the woman behind it wasn't working alone. Nathan drove in silence. His usual calm had hardened into something colder, a mix of fury, sorrow, and disbelief. Valerie had been his ally, the moral compass of the board. Or so he thought. Now all that remained was deceit wrapped in a familiar smile. "Why her?" he muttered, eyes fixed ahead. "Because she knew you'd never suspect her," Lucy replied. She turned the laptop, showing the blinking red dot on the map. "People only betray those who trust them." 3:27 a.m. They entered the North Park building, a dark glass tower standing silent in the middle of the deserted business district. Rain hit the awning with a steady, hollow rhythm. The elevator rose to the 32nd floor. When the doors slid open, a long hallway stretched before them. Silver gray carpet, dim amber lights, the stillness thick as breath before a confession. At the far end, a glass door stood ajar. Inside, Valerie Stone sat straight-backed at a sleek desk, white blouse pressed, hair in a neat bun. The glow from her laptop painted her face in cold blue. No surprise, no fear. She simply looked up when they entered. "Nathan," she said softly, voice calm and warm, disturbingly so. "You shouldn't have come." Nathan stepped closer. Each footfall echoed across the floor like a clock counting down. Lucy stood a few steps behind, laptop ready. "You betrayed us," Nathan said quietly. "The company. Everyone who trusted you." Valerie smiled faintly, eyes steady. "Betrayed?" "No, Nathan. I chose freedom." Lucy frowned. "Freedom? By selling your soul to Neuroline?" Valerie tilted her head, smile thin. "Don't be naive, Miss Rivera. Nothing in this world is free unless you pay for it. Meridian became a golden cage for people like Nathan, the ones who think they're saving the world. I just wanted out." Nathan's fist tightened. "You had everything. Power, wealth, loyalty. What did you trade it all for?" Valerie stepped forward, the light catching her eyes, turning them silver. "To be myself. Not the shadow of a man who believes he's the hero." The air thickened. Lucy stepped up beside Nathan, her voice low but steady. "Freedom doesn't come from betrayal, Valerie. It comes from the courage to fix what's broken, not to destroy it." Their gazes locked. Two women standing on opposite sides of the same wound. In that brief silence, something unspoken passed between them. A flicker of understanding, of shared scars, one who had chosen light and one who had turned to the dark. Valerie gave a soft laugh, turning her laptop toward them. "So what now, Lucy Rivera? Call the cops?" "I erased everything." Lucy said nothing. She pressed a key on her own keyboard. Instantly, Valerie's screen burst to life. Data windows flashing open, one after another. Across the display, bold white text blinked. Trace recorded. Full evidence captured. Valerie froze. Her lips parted. Her composure faltered for the first time. "You?" "It's all been recorded," Lucy said quietly. "You fell into your own trap, Valerie. The kind you used to build for others." Nathan pulled out his phone, his voice rough, controlled. "This is Carter. I need a cybercrime team at North Park Building, 32nd floor. Immediately." Valerie exhaled as if she'd known this ending all along. "You never changed, Nathan." "Righteous, noble, but you don't get it. In this world, heroes are a dying breed, and they're always the first to be hunted." Sirens wailed outside, growing louder. Red and blue lights flashed against the glass, rippling across the floor. Lucy and Nathan stood side by side as agents entered. Valerie lifted her hands without struggle, still composed, still proud. As they cuffed her, she turned once more to Nathan. Her voice was soft, like a whisper of rain, yet sharp enough to cut through the room. "Heroes always fall harder." The elevator doors closed. Lucy looked at Nathan. He didn't speak. He just stood there, eyes fixed on the empty space where Valerie had been. Outside, rain continued to fall. The city lights shimmered through the glass like fractured shards of faith. Inside Meridian, the naked truth had finally surfaced, and that night they both understood. Victory never comes without scars. Dawn broke over Manhattan. The first light of morning reflected on the glass walls of Meridian Global Systems, the same walls that, only nights ago, had glowed crimson with warning alarms. Now the tower stood clear and calm, as if no storm had ever passed through it. News of the betrayal and the stunning reversal spread quickly through Wall Street. Headlines blazed across the screens. Meridian reborn from ashes through transparency. CEO Nathan Carter and the unknown engineer who shook the tech industry. The media called it the miracle of Manhattan. Stock values rose, confidence returned. But amid the applause, Lucy Rivera felt only emptiness. She sat alone in the small operations room on the tech floor, the same place where she had saved an empire. On the desk sat a cold cup of coffee, her ID badge face down, and the blue glow of the servers bathing her weary face. Since Valerie's arrest, Lucy had been surrounded by gratitude. Thank you messages, glowing emails, admiring looks. But to her, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a quiet farewell to a chapter she was ready to close. Nathan entered, sleeves rolled, tie undone, his white shirt creased from another sleepless night. He paused in the doorway, silently watching her. The room was silent, save for the hum of the machines and the weight of unspoken thoughts. "You're still here?" he asked softly. Lucy looked up, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I'm not sure I have anywhere left to go that I can call home." Nathan frowned, hearing something fragile beneath her calm. "What are you thinking about?" She gazed at the blinking green lights before her. "I once promised myself that if I ever managed to save a system from collapse, I'd walk away." "Walk away?" he echoed, startled. "Yes." Her smile was thin, like smoke. "Because that would be the only way I could forgive myself." She stood and moved toward the window. Morning light spilled across her tied-back brown hair, catching on loose strands that framed her face. Her voice came soft but steady, as if she were speaking to her past self. "Before Meridian, I was head of security at Ethern Data Systems, a small company with big dreams. I loved the work. I loved the people I built code with." She paused, her gaze distant. "One summer night, we were attacked. I detected it, but too late. Two of my colleagues stayed in the server room to cut the data stream. When the system overloaded and exploded, they didn't make it out." Her voice trembled, the words scraping against memory. "Everyone called it a technical failure, but I knew. If I had reacted faster, if I'd trusted the first warning, they'd still be alive." Nathan didn't move. The light caught in his eyes, making them glisten, reflecting her pain back at her. Lucy drew a long breath and continued. "I was suspended. The press turned my name into a headline of shame. I disappeared, changed my surname, changed cities. I did every job I once looked down on, cleaned floors, emptied trash cans, just so I wouldn't have to touch a computer again." She turned to face him. "And then that night at Meridian, when every screen turned red, I saw myself from 5 years ago. And I knew I couldn't run anymore." Silence fell heavy between them. Nathan stepped closer, his voice rough with emotion. "You saved everyone. You've already redeemed yourself." Lucy shook her head. "No, I didn't do it to redeem the past. I did it to say goodbye to it." She picked up her badge, turning it slowly in her fingers. Its metallic edge caught the pale light. "I once lost an entire world because of one mistake. That night when Meridian came back to life, I knew I had paid my debt." Nathan was quiet for a long time. He didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound selfish. She gathered a few small belongings, wrapped them in an old cloth bag, and looked around the room one last time. "I think it's time I do the thing I've always been afraid of." "What's that?" he asked. "Begin again." She smiled, soft, almost a whisper. "I want to open a small lab, not for corporations, but for students, kids who love coding, a place where they can fail and learn to fix things." Nathan looked at her, his eyes warm, touched with pride and quiet ache. "Where will you go?" "I don't know," she said. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere with light." She brushed past him, the faint scent of soap trailing behind. At the door, his voice came low, almost carried by the air itself. "You fixed my world," he said. "Now it's time you fix your own." Lucy stopped, turned slightly, her eyes shining like dew dissolving in sunlight. "Or," his voice faltered, softer now, "you could start by fixing me." She looked at him for a long moment, not smiling, just a gentle shake of the head. "You don't need me to fix you, Nathan. You just need to believe you can still be good." When Lucy stepped out of the building, the sky had brightened completely. The first rays of sunlight glinted off the letters Meridian Global Systems across the glass facade. No longer a symbol of power, but of trust reborn. On the street, people hurried past as always, indifferent, alive, unstoppable. But in the hearts of Nathan Carter and Lucy Rivera, something had quietly shifted. No more fear, no more running, only peace and an unspoken promise, carried on the wind. 3 months later, spring had come to Boston. Snow melted slowly on the glass rooftops, leaving behind thin streaks of clear water that caught the light like threads of glass. On the top floor of Meridian Global Systems, there were no longer the sterile conference rooms or echoing hallways of old. Instead, a new space had risen, a research lab of glass and light, lined with softly blinking servers that shimmered like stars. A small steel plaque gleamed under the soft glow Rivera Innovation Lab. Lucy stood still. A spring breeze drifted through the glass walls, carrying the faint scent of magnolia. She reached out and touched the engraved letters, as if afraid they might vanish under too much pressure. In that moment, everything came rushing back. The night of fire and data, the furious rhythm of typing, the fear, the tears, and the low, hoarse voice of the man who had believed in her when the world turned away. Nathan stepped up behind her. He didn't speak, just stood there, letting the cool blue light from the servers fall over both of them. Today he wasn't in a suit, just a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. In his eyes was a small smile, tinged with something unsteady. "You know," he began softly, as if afraid to disturb the air, "when you left, this building became too quiet. I thought I liked silence, until I realized I missed the sound of your typing more than the sound of the rain." Lucy turned, smiling faintly. "I thought you didn't like noise." "Turns out," he said with a short breath of laughter, "some kinds of noise make you feel alive." He moved closer to the plaque, resting his hand beside hers. "The Rivera Lab was the board's idea, but I wanted to be the one to carve the name, because this company exists thanks to you. And maybe," he paused, meeting her eyes, "so do I." Time seemed to stand still in that instant. The light from the servers circled around them, forming soft halos that shimmered in Lucy's eyes. Deep, calm, glistening like water. "You don't owe me anything, Nathan," she said quietly. "No," he replied, "but I want to thank you in my own way." He slipped a small silver box from his pocket. When he opened it, a delicate ring caught the greenish glow of the servers, like a star trapped inside glass. Lucy said nothing, only looked at him. "You once told me," he said softly, "that saving something doesn't mean owning it. But sometimes, people don't want to possess something out of power. They choose to believe in it." He stopped, voice dropping even lower. "And I choose to believe in you." Lucy smiled, a small warm curve of the lips that seemed to light the whole room. She held out her hand. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, his touch slow, almost trembling. Light spilled across the glass walls and machinery, breaking into 1,000 glittering fragments, like a miniature night sky. In that moment, every failure, every wound, every loss became background to something stronger. Trust. "If you're doing this to make me stay," she whispered, "you already know I'm not good at staying." "I know," he said, voice low but steady. "But sometimes staying isn't about being held. It's about choosing to build something new together." She looked around the room, the steady hum of servers, the calm glow of green lights. No more alarms, no more red warnings. On the main display, a line appeared. System status, stable. Lucy smiled softly and murmured, "Finally." Nathan stepped closer. Amid the gentle hum of machines, his voice came quiet, meant for her alone. You know, every time the system lights come back online, I remember that night when you brought my world back to life. Lucy looked at him for a long moment, eyes full of peace. No, Nathan, she whispered. You're the one who made me believe that broken things can still be rebuilt. Outside, the spring sunlight poured through the glass, gliding across the ring on her hand, reflecting upward onto his face like the faint trail of a falling star. They stood together in the center of the lab, bathed in the soft blue glow of the servers, the quiet hum surrounding them like a benediction. One hand in the other, the ring shimmered against the glass, merging with the skyline beyond, where light and faith met. And there, in the cool breath of the new morning, the Rivera Innovation Lab was born, not just as a research center, but as a living memory of two people who had learned how to save not only a system, but also their hearts. 1 year later, summer had come to New York, and sunlight spilled over the city's mirrored towers like a thin layer of gold. The city no longer bore the cold sharpness of its stormy nights. It was warm, alive, radiant, much like the story of Meridian Global after a year of rebirth. In the new Hudson District, amid sleek rows of modern buildings, the Rivera Innovation Lab gleamed beneath the sun. The silver plaque engraved with RIVERA had become a symbol of trust, a beacon of new beginnings for thousands of young engineers and dreamers. Since the day it opened, Lucy's lab had trained more than 200 students, people who once thought they weren't smart enough, weren't lucky enough, or had made mistakes too big to come back from. Now, many of them were engineers, researchers, lecturers, even founders of small startups across the country. She was not just the founder, she was the spark. The name Lucy Rivera now appeared on tech panels, in small TED Talks, and in hundreds of handwritten letters from young people who wrote, "You made me believe that mistakes can't kill a dream." Outside the lab, the morning buzzed with life. A student jazz band played light tunes. The scent of fresh coffee drifted from the cafe downstairs. Young engineers lined up by the entrance, greeting guests for the Rivera Lab's first anniversary celebration. On the small stage set in the atrium, Nathan Carter appeared in a smoke gray suit. He was no longer the cold CEO who once made Wall Street tremble, but a man with a genuine smile, bright eyes, and hair kissed by sunlight. Since its rebirth, Meridian has become one of the world's leading tech firms in cybersecurity, recognized at the World Economic Forum. Yet today, Nathan wasn't there to talk about numbers, profits, or strategy. He was there to talk about her. "A year ago," he began, voice warm and steady, "we thought systems survived on algorithms. Then she taught us that a system truly runs only when powered by trust." All eyes turned toward Lucy, standing at the back of the hall in a simple white dress, her hair tied low, a bouquet of lavender in her hands. She smiled, her gray eyes glimmering under the soft stage lights. "Rivera Innovation Lab exists," Nathan continued, "because one woman believed that from ruin, something beautiful could still grow. And today I want to speak, not as a CEO, but as a man lucky enough to love her." For a heartbeat, time stopped. Nathan stepped down from the stage, the breeze rustling the white banners of the lab. He walked straight toward Lucy. She smiled and shook her head, half knowing what was coming, but her heartbeat betrayed her calm. When he knelt before her, sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, glinting off the ring in his hand, casting tiny blue stars across the floor. "1 year ago," Nathan said softly, "you told me that miracles don't fall from the sky. They come from those who never give up. So today I just want to ask, will you be my miracle one more time?" Lucy laughed through her tears. She didn't speak, just held out her hand. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, and applause erupted around them like a summer downpour. That afternoon, they walked along the Hudson River Park. A gentle breeze rippled the water, catching gold and blue from the sky. Lucy's arm wrapped around his, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. "Do you remember," she whispered, "the first time we met? It was a stormy night." "I remember," Nathan said. "And I remember that night, I'd stopped believing in anything until you walked in, quietly but bright enough." She smiled, tilting her head. "The world's simpler than we think. When one person believes in themselves, the whole system comes back to life. He stopped, turning to her, eyes bathed in the color of dusk. And you're the one who brought mine back online. They stood there between the laughter of students drifting from the lab, the rhythm of the river, and the music floating from the nearby cafe. A year had passed long enough to heal the fractures, yet short enough that their hearts still beat in unison. When the sun set, a sudden summer rain began, fine drops falling through the amber light, painting the world in shades of bronze. Lucy didn't run, and neither did Nathan. They kept walking, hand in hand, through the gentle rain, the sound of water on the pavement like the heartbeat of a new song. City lights shimmered in the puddles. The lab's blue glow blended with the gold of the sunset, forming a soft, living light like a system rebooting itself once more. I think, Nathan said, squeezing her hand, if the world really had a restart button, I'd press it only once the day I met you. Lucy smiled, her eyes shining like city lights reflected in the rain. And this time, Nathan, we'll never need to restart again.